This is Adam Bernard with AutoPerspectives, and it is time once again for a news roundup to find out what's been going on in the auto industry over the past week or so. This will be a slightly different episode. There weren't a lot of significant product launches or reveals last week, but we did have three automakers lay out some interesting product portfolio plays. So we're going to talk about those, and then we will be talking about an interesting new Audi. First up is Nissan and their body-on-frame play. The images that you're looking at here are four different artists' impressions of a new Nissan Xterra. Now, last year, Nissan announced they were going to bring the Xterra back. The Xterra has a bit of a cult following, maybe not as big as Bronco or Wrangler, but Bronco and Wrangler are both doing quite well in the market. And so Nissan felt, we have a brand that we can use to take advantage of America's interest in off-road SUVs. So let's bring it back. And they said they're going to bring it back as a body-on-frame entry for around 2028. But beyond that, they said the new body-on-frame architecture that will be used for the Xterra will also be used for other vehicles. And they were a little vague at the time, and now they have fleshed out the plans. And those plans include an Infiniti variant of the Xterra, the next generation Nissan Frontier, midsize pickup, a new Pathfinder, and an Infiniti QX60. And so again, Xterra makes total sense. Frontier, that's a mainstay product of the Nissan portfolio. Obviously not as big a seller as the Toyota Tacoma, which is the big dog in this segment, but it is still a significant player. An Infiniti variant of the Xterra could work as an alternative to something like a Lexus GX or a Land Rover Defender. If you look at the current Infinitis that are on sale right now, they all tend to be kind of smooth and curvy, which is something a little at odds with a boxier, more rugged approach that you might want for an Infiniti variant of this particular vehicle. But stranger things have happened. The biggest question that I have is about the last two vehicles. They mentioned the Nissan Pathfinder and the Infiniti QX60. Now, if you go back in history, if you're a Nissan enthusiast, the Pathfinder did start life as a body-on-frame SUV. It was basically a derivative of the old Nissan hard-body pickup. But in more recent times, it has evolved into a BFI, front-drive, all-wheel drive, three-row, family-oriented SUV, because that seems to be what America likes. And that's why almost every brand in the U.S. market has a vehicle like that. But if you look at, again, what America likes, Toyota sold about 99,000 4Runners last year. The 4Runner is their body-on-frame, two-row, midsize SUV. But that was about half the combined sales of the Highlander and the Grand Highlander, which are their three-row BFI vehicles. So clearly a lot more interest in the latter than the former. Ford sold about 50 more Explorers than Broncos, and that's combining the two-door and four-door Bronco sales. Similar trends exist on the luxury side of the range. The Lexus TX sells about 50% higher volumes than the Lexus GX. Now, body-on-frame structures are great for towing and off-roading, but not so great for space efficiency and fuel economy. And I can certainly see an opportunity to add vehicles like that to your portfolio. But replacing BFI entries like the Pathfinder and the QX60 with body-on-frame entries seems a little short-sighted. And it would provide some differentiation, but it also seems like a way to miss out on significant volume opportunities for both Nissan and Infiniti dealers. So we'll see if that sticks. I suspect those vehicles wouldn't show up until, say, 2029 or 2030, if in fact the Xterra is the first vehicle off of this new architecture. The next play comes from Ford, and the play in this case is affordability. The vehicle you're looking at here is the Ford Mondeo from China, and I'll explain why in a moment. At this year's National Auto Dealers Association, which happened last week, their convention, Ford announced 5 new entries under $40,000 by the end of the decade. Now, we all know that affordability is a big issue in the U.S. at the moment for a variety of consumer products, but especially in the auto industry. The onset of electric vehicles, which have very expensive batteries, has pushed up the price of new vehicles. And then you have issues like tariffs and shortages, and we've seen the average price of a new car now hover a little over $50,000. And there's a lot of people who seem to be shut out about the idea of actually getting a new car and would have to settle for a used vehicle or pay exorbitant monthly payments. Ford has said that these 5 new vehicles would not be cheaper versions of existing car lines, like a Tesla Model Y standard, but there would be new nameplates, so new additions to the portfolio. Now, we already know about the electric midsize pickup that is being developed in California in the Skunk Works on the Universal Electric EV platform. And that vehicle is supposed to start around $30,000, so well under the $40,000 price point. But Ford has said the additional entries will not necessarily all be EVs. So they're not all coming off the UEV architecture. They'll be multi-energy. So look for ICE and hybrid vehicles to fill out the slots there. And note that the price point now is $40,000, not $30,000. So it does give them a little more room to play, as it were. But they've indicated that cars, SUVs, vans, and pickups are all expected to be impacted by this announcement. So what does that mean in terms of what could go into Ford's portfolio? We are probably going to see a replacement for the Escape. The Escape just went out of production. Ford dealers are a little worried that, yes, they still have the Bronco Sport, but the Bronco Sport is a different kind of vehicle than the Escape, even though it's the same platform. And Ford is worried that they're going to lose dealers. So could they bring back another more urban-oriented compact SUV to replace the Escape? Maybe another famous Ford nameplate like the Falcon. I certainly wouldn't rule that out. Another option, of course, is a SUV off this affordable EV platform as well. So sister vehicle to the upcoming pickup. On the van side, the current Ford Transit Connect is not what you think it is. It's actually a reworked Volkswagen Caddy in Europe. It's built by Volkswagen and sold by Ford. Could Volkswagen build that in Mexico and sell that here to Ford in the US? Possibly. Could they be looking at a new van of some sort just for the US market? That's a possibility as well. We know that Ford Pro is a big moneymaker for the company, and so adding a more affordable commercial van might work for them. None of the previous small vans that were on sale in the US, like the Ram ProMaster City and the previous Transit Connect, sold very well. Ram has said they're bringing back the ProMaster City, so Ford may have decided that maybe it's time to re-examine the idea of a smaller, more affordable commercial van. And then finally, a car. Right now, Ford only makes two cars, basically, the Mustang, which we all know, and which is already here. And if you go to China, the Ford Mondeo. Now, they used to make a Ford Escort in China, which was a compact sedan. That vehicle went out of production 3 years ago, which leaves the Mondeo standalone. As you can see, it's a handsome looking vehicle. Could they bring it here? Probably not, because it's built in China. Could they build it here? Possibly. It is the same platform as the Bronco Sport. It's the C2. It's their BFI front drive architecture. So with some work, they could build it somewhere in the US. At one point, you might recall, they built Lincoln MKZs and Ford Mustangs in the same plant in Flat Rock. So they theoretically could even build this vehicle on a new line down there. And it could be electrified as well. Again, we're probably going to find out more about this in the coming year or so. It should be worth noting that GM already has several vehicles under $30,000 in their portfolio: the Envista, the Encore, the Trax, and the Trailblazer. Stellantis' strategy in this area is still a little vague. The Dodge Hornet is dead. Chrysler has talked about a vehicle under $30,000, and there's a new Jeep Renegade coming. But the new Compass is still quite a ways off, so we've got the old Compass. So Stellantis doesn't yet seem to have an affordability plan for the US. So we will wait and see. But this could put Ford out in front a little. And the last play we'll look at comes from Genesis. Now, you might recall that when Genesis launched in the US, they'd launched with two sedans in a market that really liked SUVs, and they launched without their own channel. So if you wanted to buy a $70,000 Genesis G80, you had to mingle with people that were buying Hyundai Tucsons, because they were all sold through Hyundai dealers. They have now added SUVs, they've added electrification, they have added their own dealer channel. Their vehicles are now more unique and more standalone, so they're really on an upward trajectory here. And now, on top of everything else, they have said, you know what, we need to kind of wean ourselves off of the Hyundai hardware. And they've done some of that already. The larger rear drive Genesis products are all on a platform that by and large isn't used by Hyundai or Kia. But they want a new bespoke platform that would be compatible with both EV and hybrid powertrains. The Genesis EV6 currently is based on the EGMP, which is used by Hyundai and Kia products. And Genesis specifically said it was decided that in order to fulfill the requirements of the brand's driving dynamics, Genesis needs its own platform for future models. And so, again, distinctive from EGMP and M3, which is the rear drive ICE platform. This platform is supposed to debut next year, and so figure out what's coming down from Genesis. It could be the new G90 that will be the lead vehicle on this platform, the GV90. It should have been shown already. We saw a concept called the Neoloon a couple of years ago. There have been some prototypes that have been spotted driving around, including a long wheelbase variant with coach doors, but we haven't had the official launch yet. So we do expect to see that sometime this year, and then sales would begin next year. So that could be the basis for this vehicle. This new plan is consistent with the move away from EVs towards electrified ICE, including e-revs. The business case, can they really afford their own platform? They plan to sell 350,000 units a year by 2030. That's a roughly 50% increase over what they sold last year. So assuming they can keep that trajectory going, that should provide enough of a business case to create their own standalone hardware set. The open question is whether powertrains will become unique as well. There's some overlap between Hyundai internal combustion and electric powertrains, and those used by Genesis. That may change as well going forward. So we'll wait for more news on that. And finally, one new car, at least theoretically, has been spotted driving around. Audi has announced the A2 is coming back. If you are an Audi enthusiast, you might recall the original A2 was launched at the end of the 20th century. I remember seeing it revealed at the Frankfurt Motor Show in 1999. It was an aluminum-bodied Super Mini, and so this will become the new entry-level Audi EV going forward. The sketch that you see here from Autocar is based on spy photos, suggesting a similar profile with a very curved roofline, and then at the back, kind of a split rear window, both of which echo the original. You can see in the upper right there, the original A2. Fun fact, the original A2 had a fixed hood, which now you see on some EVs, but it was very rare at the time for an internal combustion vehicle to have a fixed hood, but they only wanted the technicians at the dealers to get a hold of it. The new model is expected to share the ID.3 platform, and the ID.3 is expected to get a big update this year, so the A2 will get all of the benefits of that. And it'll likely be shown before the end of the year. So either a standalone event or perhaps the Paris Motor Show in September, or maybe even Auto China in April. This vehicle was originally intended to use the 800 volt SSP architecture. That's a scalable systems platform. That component set has been delayed, so this will be a 400 volt architecture, but it should charge at a reasonably competitive rate for a vehicle in this class. And it'll replace both the A1 and the Q2 internal combustion vehicles that were recently canceled. And if you were in China, there's also a Q2 e-tron, so it will replace that vehicle as well. So it'll be Audi's smallest, but not necessarily cheapest model. And that about winds up this week's news roundup. If you like what you see and hear, please subscribe and share. And if you want to check out the blog, visit us at AutoPerspectives.net. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you back here next week. So long.